right, you got numbers there in front of you, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
All right, good deal. That's where we're starting.
I got something.
All right.
It's something that appears on my little brain all the time. But, you know, our church went under, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I have yet to see it listed anywhere that it was flooded. You know, in the Baptist message, they list this last time they glad the churches, you know, so we need to take out an ad and say, we flooded, but the Lord has taken care of us, and we, you know, it's just
They
one of
never
those.
flooded.
Yeah, but, I mean, I see it in print, and they list other churches, you know, and they say, you know, they listed the ones that are still, and they're working on it. And, you know, and I just say, they don't over here.
The devil tried to flood us, but the Lord prevailed.
Amen.
We are
You know, it's
here.
just one of those things, when I start reading that, they say flooded, and I say, wait a minute.
There's a cleanup company advertised on TV, and their little tagline is like it never even happened.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Serpro, that's right. So that's kind of like we are, like it never even happened, but we are.
They don't, y'all remember it happened, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it happened.
Lon, you remember it happened?
I'm living it, yeah.
Right.
An event that you'll never forget.
You're living it every day,
Every
yeah.
day.
Yeah. Y'all can, you know, just like old Noah. I remember before the flood.
I sell air mattresses because I know them so well now.
Okay, well, this morning we're starting the book of Numbers. And as you probably gleaned already, there are a lot of numbers in the book of Numbers. And y'all will be responsible for every one of them. So that'll be on the final exam.
Not only numbers, there's a lot of names.
There's a lot of names and numbers in the book of Numbers. I was reading a little bit about it. The name of the book in ancient times was originally referred to as the Hebrew word for in the wilderness. But, you know, it became known as Numbers. Why? Because, as we said, there's just an awful lot of numbers here. I guess a couple of the most significant things about the book of Numbers is that it starts off with a census, okay? And then, that's at the beginning. This is, you know, we start here, we're going to see that we started out, Numbers chapter 1 starts in the second year of the second month of the second year. It's the first day of the second month of the second year since leaving Egypt. So, you know, basically the whole book of Exodus and Leviticus, you know, consumed only about a year or so, right? Maybe even a little bit less than a year in the wilderness. The book of Numbers spans almost 40 years. And we're going to see that it starts out, like I said, in the second month of the second year. We're going to see that in chapter 10, the people of Israel, the children of Israel, they leave Sinai for the first time. As we know, when they left Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea, they traveled around for a while, and they wind up at Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, they spent a considerable amount of time. They spent, I guess, the better part of a year there. And there they received God's laws. There they received the instructions, the design, and the plans and specifications for the tabernacle. That's where they build the tabernacle. That's where they build all the furniture of the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, the altar of sacrifice, etc., etc. That's where they receive all the laws about the sacrifices. That's where they receive the laws about the various ceremonies, the festivals they were there to observe. A lot of information is given, a lot of instruction is given to the people in Exodus and Leviticus in a relatively short period of time. And we're going to see also something I think very interesting about the book of Numbers is whereas in the book of Leviticus we had detailed, you know, down to the minute details of instructions about how the sacrifices are to take place. You know, we had the 5 sacrifices that were listed. We were given the order in which the sacrifices to be given. We're told the type of animal. We're told what is to be done with the animal, both bringing it in, laying on the hand, slaying the animal, skinning the animal, gutting the animal. What do you do with the various parts of it? You know, part of it is, you know, some things are eaten, some things are not eaten, some things are burned, some things are taken outside of the camp. Anyway, minute detail about the sacrifices. What we're going to see here in Numbers, at least in the 4 chapters, that the focus is on the people. And it's in the first 4 chapters we have explicit instructions. First we have a numbering of the people. God instructs Moses to tell the people, I want you to count all your numbers, all right, and record those. And then He tells the people exactly where they're supposed to be, and then he tells the people exactly what they're supposed to do. You see frequently in these chapters that Moses says, this is the charge of a certain group of people. This, some translations say, this is your task, or this is your duty. And they're given specific tasks, both where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And I think that's very interesting, and that's a very important part of the lesson, especially today. We're going to talk about the charge and the duties and the stations of the people.
So do you think, obviously God knew how many there was, you know, so it's not that, but is it because for 400 years they weren't really tribes, they were just living, and so this is to get them unified and
Yeah.
history and preserve them?
Yeah, the point that Lon makes is absolutely essential. That's right. They were just sort of a loose conflagration of people. I mean, or you know, group of people in Egypt. And when they come out, then they are organized into camps, into tribes. And not only are they organized into camps and tribes, they're told exactly where they're supposed to be. You know, in other words, if you're from the tribe of Dan, you're supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here or here or here. Okay. So anyway.
Were they intermarried at that time?
I don't think they were. I think all the tribes were to remain fairly pure.
I mean, do you think that in Egypt, they were like, I'm a Benjamite, I'm from Dan, they did that? Or, I mean, because
Well,
it started with only 70 people,
Yeah.
right?
I think they did, and based upon these records, and we're going to read some of this, it appears that they kept pretty good records of who was in their tribe, and so they did have an identity.
Okay.
You know, and for example, you know, one of the things we learned. Remember when I think it's in Genesis chapter 15 when God appears to Abram and he makes a covenant with him, and that's when they divide the animals and they walk through, and we have the vision of the furnace. God tells Abram at that time, says, your people are going to go into slavery in a foreign land, and they're going to remain there for how many generations?
40, I guess.
For 4 generations. It could be different point, but he says you can be there for 4 generations, and at the 4th generation you're going to come out. And one of the ways we get the measurement of the generations, it starts out with obviously the children of Israel, the children of Jacob. They come over. The 70 come into the land, and there are 12 of them at the time, and one of them was Levi, and the Levites play a very significant role. But we're told in Exodus that Levi had a son named Kohath, and Kohath had a son named Amram, and Amram had 2 sons named Moses and Aaron. So we see that Levi was the first to go in. He was the 1st generation, and the 4th generation is Moses and Aaron, and they're the ones that come out. And so those names appear rather prominently in Leviticus and also in Numbers too. We're going to see how the Kohathites were very significant folks at that time. Kohath was, of course, the grandfather of Moses and Aaron. A lot of those folks, obviously, most of them have been dead. But, you know, I get the sense, answer to your question, yeah, that even when they were, when they were in Egypt, they weren't very well organized, but they did keep some records of their families, and I think they did keep the tribes fairly separate in terms of not intermarrying and maintaining the integrity of each tribe. Yes, sir?
What did they call it, Leviticus? What does it mean?
What is the book of Levi? What does the book Leviticus mean?
Yeah.
It is a derivation of Levi, and Levi was the priestly tribe, and they call it Leviticus as, like, I guess an adjective, like Levitical laws. Leviticus is a book about what the priests did, and that's what the book of Leviticus is largely composed of, are the laws that related to the priests and what the priests were supposed to do insofar as the sacrifice are concerned, insofar as the festivals were concerned. That's a good question.
I found, you know, in studying and looking, that it's strange that God used Egypt so much. You know,
Yeah, he did.
when he sent them to Egypt, they went to Egypt, you know,
Yeah.
at different stages, you know.
Yeah.
And then,
He seemed to use the countries that were in power, you know, teach the.
Yeah.
but, you know, when they were in trouble, they always he sent them to Egypt, you know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we know about, where do we first hear about Egypt?
Didn't Abraham go down there?
Exactly. Abraham went down there, he got in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, he got in trouble several different ways when he went down there.
But he wasn't supposed to go there, was he?
Huh?
He wasn't supposed to go there.
No, God said he wanted him to be in the land of Canaan.
Canaan, right.
And so I think there was a famine there, and so he starts looking around rather than looking to God for assistance. He goes down into Egypt and he gets himself in trouble down there. But one of the troubles that he got himself into is what he brought back with him, which was what?
Hagar?
Which was Hagar, that's right. And his little dalliance down in Egypt, bringing Hagar back, was the beginning of a dispute that lasts and exists even to this very day and hour, right? Because that was the beginning of the Ishmaelites, the Arabs.
Speaking geography,
Uh-huh.
usually whenever you travel east, you're going away from God.
No, east is towards God. Wait, no, that's right. Go west, that's right. From the east to the west is
Go west,
towards God. That's
go west, young
the
man.
west of it, that's right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Or Golden
So anyway, Egypt, I was just looking at the map, is south, so that doesn't correlate.
No, because, you think about Egypt, and that's a good question. We probably spent a lot of time. So Abraham went to Egypt and he got in trouble. The children of Israel, they sold, the sons of Israel, the 10 sons, they sold their brother into slavery and he went to Egypt.
Right.
And then they came to Egypt and they wound up, staying in Egypt, I think for their punishment. I think they were punished. The reason they spent 400 years there is because they sold their brother into slavery, a very terrible thing, I think, in God's sight. So Egypt turns out to be a place of punishment,
But
right?
God did send Joseph with Jesus to
That's
Egypt,
right,
didn't
that's
he?
right. And that's right, in the New Testament, when Joseph and Mary and Jesus are under the threat of Herod, God sent them down to Egypt.
That's what I was talking,
Yeah.
each time, it seems like when there's trouble or something, or he sends everybody to Egypt.
Yeah,
For good or bad.
Yeah.
for good or bad, kind of a place for time out. Yeah, place you.
Thinking that's the time out place.
That's right. And, you can find that, if you don't watch out, you get in trouble there, right? Like Abraham did. But now, God had a reason. He brought them out of Egypt. And it's very interesting because, that you bring that up, because when God spoke to the people, when God introduces himself, he very often says what? I'm the God who brought you out of slavery in Egypt. So he very much wanted the people to remember their time in Egypt. Never wanted to forget the fact that they were slaves and that he was the one who delivered them from their slavery.
I've seen a statement somewhere, when they talking about that some people think that that's where Christianity came from Egypt.
I don't think that's right. Yeah.
But that's Egypt at some time seemed like writings and stuff on the wall was
Yeah.
and they say, well, that's where they got their from,
Yeah.
was from Egypt.
Yeah.
That's, they don't read the whole stuff.
No, that's true. That's true. Okay, so what we're going to see as we study this, the structure of the book of Numbers is broken down basically chapters 1 through 21. 1 through 21 take place, that basically describes 40 years in the wilderness. And then you have this section from 22 through 25, which is the Balaam story that we all remember, and the talking donkey, right? That sort of forms a literary hinge between the first part, which is 40 years, and then 26 through 36 deal with the new generation. At the beginning of chapter 26, there's a new census. You say, why is there a new census? I believe it's because as of that point in time, everybody who had been alive, who was under the curse, they had died, and this is the new generation. And so new census. A second census is taken at that time because this is the group that is going to be proceeding into the promised land.
Meet your kinfolks.
That's right, the new generation.
But I guess it'd be interesting, I think too, it would be a way to show that even through the desert, they prospered, that group.
Yeah.
God took care of them, it's another way. So I'd be curious to know if the census is more or less.
It's actually pretty close to the same if you look at it. I mean, they lost a few, but for example, you see in chapter 1, verse 36, the number of all the men, and of course we're talking about the number that's given, the population of 603,550 was not everybody.
Right.
It was only the men who were over the age of 20 who were capable of going to war, right? So that probably would have been men between about the age of 20 and 40 or 20 and 50. So in addition to that, you'd had the men younger than 20, you'd had the men, the old folks, then you have all the females. And so that's where people believe that if you took the 600,000 of the men and you just rounded that up to 1 million for all the males, younger than 20 and then older than fighting age, and you double that for the females,
Right.
you have at least 2 million. A lot of people say that the population is probably closer total population between 2 million and 3 million. And then if you jump over to Numbers chapter 26, when they take the new census, the total is, in chapter 26, verse 51, you'll see that the number at that point in time was 601,730.
Just a little less.
Yeah, so you do the math, it's
Less than 2,000.
it's about 1,800 less, something like that, but pretty close,
Yeah,
pretty close.
okay.
So a lot of them died off, and so the repopulation was pretty significant too.
Their clothes didn't wear out, but their bodies did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get in the book of Numbers. There's a lot of interesting stories here that you remember. For example, it's in the book of Numbers that we have the story of the spies going into the promised land and they spy it out. And we're going to get to that. That's about Numbers chapter 13. But that is one of the most anguishing stories in all of the Old Testament history, if you ask me, because this is the chance where God gives them to go into the land, see that it is a land flowing with milk and honey, but guess what? There's danger there. And so rather than having the faith, right, they saw that, and 10 out of the 12 said, we can't beat these giants. And so God says, what? All right.
Giants and fortified cities.
Yeah, giants and fortified cities. God says, if you don't trust in me to save you, y'all are going to die in the wilderness. Not only that, you're going to spend 1 year for every, how many, they spent 40 days. 1 year in the wilderness for every day that you spent spying out the land. So they spent 40 days spying out the land. You spent 40 years in the wilderness, and everybody who's 20 years or older, you're going to die here. As you said, your clothes aren't going to wear out.
Except for 2,
Except for 2, that's right. Which were?
Joshua and Caleb.
Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 that made it. Aaron died off, Moses didn't make it, everybody else died off except for those 2. But then, again, they repopulated. The population was only about 1,800.
Maybe it was something they ate or didn't eat.
Didn't believe.
Yep.
But when
Don't
they
have any
went
mustard group.
spied on them, they actually came back and told the truth.
They did. They reported the facts, and if they had just reported the facts, they'd have been fine. But the problem was,
They may
based
have been
upon the
fine.
facts, they had the opportunity to either, believe God was gonna preserve them, or to fear and to put their confidence in their own flesh.
You wonder what it was like when they went over there, were they hiding or
Sure.
whatever, when they went to look.
Guarantee they
What
were.
they
They were
were.
spies.
Yeah, they said they were
They
spies.
went over as spies.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's kind of like the story of David and Goliath. All the soldiers were afraid, but David,
Yeah.
God's on my side, I can do it.
But it's like Rick said, reconnaissance is to gather information, report it. It's not your decision to say, because of this, we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
That would have been Moses' decision,
Yeah.
or with God,
Yeah, and fear spread like a wildfire through the camp. It ate everybody up, Okay, well, let's work our way through. Much of what we have in the first 4 chapters, I've summarized in this little diagram here. It seems like a lot of information there. What in the very center of that is my effort to draw this. Terry said, "Why don't you just post that up on the board?" Well, yeah, well, I don't have enough supplies. I don't have enough wood. But anyway, you get the idea. That's the camp. It's oriented. The door, the main entrance is right here, right, which always faces
East.
to the east. That's right. And so we have around that what we're going to read about here. So let's read some of the details, and we'll talk about that chart and especially what it means. Okay.
So that's where they lived, the tribes
That's where
were.
they camped.
That's
Where
right.
they camped.
That's where that's how they were supposed to set up camp every time. And we see here that the camp was originally set up in the book of Exodus, and it's told about in Leviticus. In chapter 33 of the book of Numbers, we have the records of all their travels, how they picked up and moved. And they moved apparently looks like about 40 times. But if you look if you just want to skip over, look at chapter 33, maybe you can help me to decipher this.
I got the impression when I was reading it, they traveled like that too. Is that right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, there's a specific order that they had to pick up. If you look at in chapter 33, that's the record of all their travels, okay? And it starts out in verse 5, then the sons of Israel journeyed from Ramesses, which of course is in Egypt, and they camped in Succoth, and they went from Succoth to Ethan, and then Ethan to various places, and they journeyed through various places into the wilderness. Then they went 3 days journey into the wilderness, and they camped there, and they camped. And if you look over all the way to verse 15, it says, and they journeyed from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. Okay? That, I think, is probably, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think that is where they would have stayed for about a year and built the tabernacle and all of its furnishings. And then you see from there, and we're going to read about that, then they picked up and they moved, it looks like at least another about 30 times. So altogether, it shows that they moved 40 different times. But somebody's going to ask the question, well, how many times did they deconstruct the tabernacle and reconstruct it? It looks like to me that it's at least 30 times, if not more. So they did it quite a number of times. And we're going to see here that certain people were responsible for certain things.
So where's Levites?
The Levites these are the families of the Levites right here. There's 3 different divisions.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're going to see that. We have the Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites.
They make up the Levites?
Yeah.
Okay.
They make up the Levites, and of course Moses and Aaron were here.
Gotcha.
And the sons of Aaron were the ones who were responsible for the various functions within sacrifices and whatnot. But again, where they're situated is very important because God said, this is where I want you to be.
Right.
Okay? And then he says for the rest of the tribes, this is where you're supposed to be. Okay, let's read a little bit. Let's try to understand this. Let's start off with chapter 1, verses 1 through 19. Let's start with that. Nancy, would you start reading for us?
You know, the good Lord gave out a lot of food stamps that time. Maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah, but you know what? Those who got those food stamps, they didn't get to sit around.
Yeah, it wasn't entitled, I'll tell you.
No, everybody had a place to be and a job to do. Everybody. All right, Numbers chapter 1, verses 1 through 19. Would you read that for us, Nancy?
1 through 19?
Yes, ma'am.
The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take a census of the whole congregation of Israelites, in their clans, by ancestral houses, according to the number of names, every male individually. From 20 years old and upward, everyone in Israel able to go to war. You and Aaron shall enroll them company by company. A man from each tribe shall be with you, each man the head of his ancestral house. These are the names of the men who shall assist you. From Reuben, Elizur son of Shedeur. From Simeon, Shlemiel son of... We're going to pass over all the names.
Okay. All you have to do is read the sons of
Joseph.
From Simeon, from
yeah,
Judah,
Reuben,
from Issachar,
there
from
you go.
Zebulun,
Yep.
from the sons of Joseph, from Ephraim, from Manasseh, from Benjamin, from Dan, from Asher, from Gad, from Naphtali.
Okay.
These were the ones chosen from the congregation, the leaders of their ancestral tribes, the heads of the divisions of Israel. Moses and Aaron took these men who had been designated by name, and on the first day of the second month they assembled the whole congregation together. They registered themselves and their clans by their ancestral houses according to the number of names from 20 years old and upward, individually, as the Lord commanded Moses. So he enrolled them in the wilderness of Sinai.
All right, pause right there. So you see in verse 18 at least, it says he assembled all the congregation, then he registered by ancestry in their families, by their fathers' households according to the numbers of names. Somebody else read that. Jackie, read that in your translation.
Verse 18.
Yeah, verse 18.
And they called the whole community together on the first day of the second month. The people indicated their ancestry by their clans and families. And the men, 20 years old or more, were listed by name, one by one, as the Lord commanded Moses, and so counted them in the desert of Sinai.
All right, so they must have had some sort of records or some sort of knowledge of who they were. And one of the things that is said about this, one of the commentaries I read said when Moses got them all together, basically he said, all right, everybody who's of the tribe of Reuben, raise your hand. Now you move over here. And everybody who's of the tribe of Asher, you move over here. And Gad, you move over here. So he gathered them together, and then they counted them. Okay?
Anybody know the population of Central?
No.
I was just trying to get a handle on why they didn't know each other, first cousin, second cousin and all. But, I mean, is it 100,000 or is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Because that would kind of give us an idea like how big these family plans were, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah.
But two, we don't know, you mean how they knew each other? We don't know how far they were spread out in Egypt either, somewhere.
They were all in the same basic area.
Yeah. They were all there. They're in the plains of Sinai. Everybody can see
They're in the
Mount
desert.
Sinai from where they are. And so they're in the desert.
Right,
They have,
in Egypt.
I'm sorry?
In Egypt, but they'd known each other in Egypt.
Yes.
How were they spread in Egypt?
Not much, well, no.
I mean, they were all in their own territory.
And you
in the
knew
land
that
of-
they were Jews and not Egyptians.
Yeah, they definitely were, yeah.
They were in the land of Goshen, we know.
Because they kept their livestock separate.
That's right. And from the account of Exodus, it appears that there were some Egyptians that kind of lived in that area, but they didn't really mingle with them.
Right.
So they were there and they were separated. God, wanted them to be separate. Didn't want them to intermarry certainly with the Egyptians.
They
But
have
with
to
their-
get together to get their voter ID cards.
Yeah.
But when they're out there talking and trying to get a census here, I was just wondering, like, it seems like, okay, well, they're all in the same family, but that's a lot of people.
Yeah, and we see later on that each family had a standard, okay? And you can see that, I mean, they would have had a unique insignia of some sort on it or symbol. And so you can see how useful that would have been. So, when the standard of Reuben is raised up, everybody in that family was to gather, and the same way with everybody else. And so you can kind of see from a distance. And so they gathered together.
But a lot of this wasn't family to family, probably wasn't, well, it may have been written down, but it wasn't too many scholars, a lot of them were just workers. So it didn't have to be memorized and passed.
Yeah.
But you always got a grandma or a grandpa that keeps
Yeah,
up
but
with
they-
who's
That's right. Somebody had a family Bible. But
That's right.
they read all their kin. They got to be
I'm
pretty
saying
thick.
it probably wasn't just written down
Yeah.
unless somebody,
One way you could probably kind of visualize how much it'd be, you take Tiger Stadium holds 108,000, 110,000.
Yeah.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
That'd be a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
They said the population of Central was 26,000 in 2010 census. So that's
So-
7 years ago, so it's probably doubled, huh?
Yeah.
But
So-
still, that's not even,
Each one of these tribes, for example, let's look in verse 20 and 21, says the sons of Reuben, when you just took the fighting men, the men of military age is 46,500. So the entire tribe of Reuben probably would have been close to 100,000 people,
Tiger Stadium.
like Tiger Stadium, okay? Then verse 22 is Simeon, you just might want to put a little tick mark by these. Simeon is 59,300. Verse 24, Gad numbered 46,650. Again, each one of these, when you add the
45,000.
the women, I'm sorry, 45,000. When you add the women and children, probably would have been close to 100,000. You get in verse 26, Judah, 74,600. They seem to be the largest tribe so far. Again, that probably would have put them at 150,000 or more. Issachar, verse 28, 54,000. Zebulun, verse 30, 57,000. Ephraim, verse 32, is 40,500. Verse 34, Manasseh, he's 32,200. Verse 36, Benjamin, the baby boy, 35,400. Verse 38, Dan, 62,700. Again, he looks like he's second place so far. Asher in verse 40, 41,500. Verse 42, Naphtali, 53,400. Okay, and all those together, you see in verse 46, underline that so you have that for future reference, 603,550. Again, that was just the men of fighting age. And then down in 47, let's read 47 through,
Rick.
Yes.
Excuse me, was all this written down?
all the people.
Yeah.
Well,
Was
it-
it recorded on some kind of sheepskin or?
The census?
Yes.
Yes, it was, and that's why we have this. Moses would have written this down. This was the original Pentateuch, first 5 books. of the-
They didn't have computers, they almost have to have a wagon train of sheepskin to write all this down.
Well, you think so. They had a bunch of it. But yeah, even, the records that would have predated Moses, we don't have all of those, but I think there probably was some sort of a record that would have been carried out in Egypt that would have had, the family names. Everybody, like the grandma had the family Bible
Yeah.
for each one of the tribes, so they would have had some, some familial identification, if you will, of these folks. Okay.
Somebody wrote it down later in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
They did. So yeah, this, what we have here, the book of Numbers, this was written by Moses. He wrote it on, probably some sort of animal skin, and it was preserved, then it was, translated and rewritten, but this is what he wrote down right here, these numbers. All right, 47 through 54. Terry, would you read it for us?
47?
Yes, chapter 1, verse 47.
Families of the tribe of Levi, however, were not counted along with the others. The Lord had said to Moses, "You must not count the tribe of Levi or include them in the census of the other Israelites. Instead, appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle of the testimony, over all its furnishings and everything belonging to it. They are to carry the tabernacle and all of its furnishings. They are to take care of it and encamp around it. Whenever the tabernacle is moved, the Levites are to take it down, and whenever the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall do it. Anyone else who goes near it shall be put to death. The Israelites are to set up their tents by division, each man in his own camp under his own standard. The Levites, however, are to set up their tents around the tabernacle of the testimony, so that wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. The Levites are to be responsible for the care of the tabernacle of the testimony. The Israelites did all this just as the Lord commanded Moses."
Okay, so there we see that the Levites were not to be included in this particular census, but we're going to see later on that they were numbered, because we're going to see that for the three groups of Levites, if you look in chapter 3, verse 17, we're going to get to that later, it says, "And these are the sons of Levi by their names, Gershon and Kohath and Merari." And so the Levites were divided into these three tribes, the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the Merarites, and they are numbered, and their tasks are given specifically. Let's look at chapter 2. And this tells us, we can go through this rather summarily, and let me just read it for you, and I want you to look at what I have up on the board here. This starts out by saying, well, I tell you what, why don't you read that for us if you don't mind? And then we'll just kind of point to it as we go.
1 through.
Read 1 through 4 first.
Okay. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "The Israelites are to camp around the tent of meeting some distance from it, each man under his standard with the banners of his family. On the east toward the sunrise, the divisions of the camp of Judah are to encamp under their standard. The leader of the people of Judah is Nahshon, son of Amminadab. His division numbers 74,600.
Keep on reading.
The tribe of Issachar will camp next to them. The leader of the tribe of Issachar is Nathaniel, son of Zuar. His division numbers 54,400. The tribe of Zebulun will be next. The leader of the people of Zebulun is Eliab, son of Helon. His division numbers 57,400. All the men assigned to the camp of Judah, according to their divisions, number 186,400. They will set out first.
All right, pause right there. Okay, so you see right here, I haven't given all the details, but first it says that all the tribes we've just numbered, 3 tribes will camp to the east of the tabernacle, okay? That's Judah and Issachar and Zebulun, and their number is 186,400. Yes, ma'am?
Kathy's got a neat picture. And the way she has them lined up,
Yeah.
instead of next to each other, there's Judah first, Issachar, and then Zebulun
Yeah.
in your drawing, that way. That
Uh-huh.
makes more sense than I'm
Could
trying
be,
to
could
go.
be. So the idea is that you have Judah first, Issachar here, and Zebulun here. And the same way with these others, Reuben and Simeon and Gad and these others.
If you're thinking of
So the
marching,
idea,
if you're thinking of marching, that makes more sense.
yeah. And it could very well be, in Kathy's diagram, which is interesting, it draws a big cross, and I kind of like the visual aspect of that. You going? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
They're still getting manna at this time.
Yeah, they got manna the whole time they were in the wilderness. They sure
Those
did.
quail.
Yeah, plus some quail. As punishment.
Well, I was thinking,
It's
you know,
democratic,
when they told them what they couldn't eat, that was probably so that they would have animals for the sacrifices.
Uh-huh.
You know, they would eat the manna, but
Right.
because they were bringing animals with them, and that many people, they would ate them up pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so anyway, in the time we have left, let's, all right, if we look through here, we're gonna see that then it proceeds to, where do we leave off? Kathy, you wanna read that for us? Are you not gonna read? Okay. Who's got some eyes they can read? Kenny, you wanna read?
What verse are we in?
10.
Okay.
Starting at 10 on the south side.
On the south will be the divisions of the camp of Reuben under, under their standard. The leader of the people of Reuben is Eleazar, son of Shadur. His division numbers 46,500. The tribe of Simeon will camp next to them. The leader of the people of Simeon is Shalom, son of Shadi. His division numbers 59,300. The tribe of Gad will be next. The leader of the people of Gad is Eliphaz, son of Dual. His division numbers 45,650. All the men assigned to the camp of Reuben according to their division number 151,450. They will set out second.
So it's interesting, we see the numbers plus the order in which they will, when they make their proceeding out. You got first, second, third, and fourth. We don't need to go through all these, but we see that you know, once we get to all of the groups, basically this is the number of the troops, the fighting men, and you see how they're stationed all the way around, right? Then we see we're going to read later on, let's go to chapter 3. When we start talking about when we're told about the Levites, verse 17, chapter 3. Lon, would you pick up there?
Whew, these names, I'll try.
Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you don't have to read all those names, but just read a few, and you kind of skip over just to give us the flavor up to get to verse 24.
These were the names of Gershon and his clans, but Libyan, Shimi, the Kohathi clans, then the Merari clans, and they were the Levites' clans according to their families. To Gershon belongs the clans of the Libanites and the Shemonites. They were the Gershonite clan. The number of all the males a month old or more who were counted was 7,500. The Gershonite clan were to camp on the west behind the tabernacle. The leader of the families of the Gershonite was Israel, son of. At the tent of the meeting of the Gershonites were responsibility for the care of the tabernacle and tent and its coverings. The curtain at the entrance to the tent of the meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the curtain to the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle, and the altar and the ropes, and everything related to their use.
All right, pause right there, that's through 26?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the Gershonites, and we see the Gershonites, they're supposed to be on the west side. So there were 7,500 men there, and what was their, let's write also down what their task was.
Interesting,
Yes.
they counted all the males a month old
Yeah.
and older,
Yeah.
whereas the others counted the males 20 years old
But-
and older.
That's right.
But the other ones were for war, right?
Right.
These guys.
So I've got two numbers here under the Gershonites. The 7,500 represent, say that again, Wanda?
The male's a month old or more.
Okay, so that's, and we're gonna get another number, which is gonna be the men of service age between ages 30 and 50. We're gonna read about that later. But what was the task, what's the specific task of the Gershonites? What are they supposed to take
The
care of?
service tabernacle.
Yeah. They're the curtains, right?
You have to hurt people. So God had this, and God said, look, time for y'all, Moses, for y'all to move.
Yeah.
And God had to vacate because they couldn't go in there and touch anything, they had to kill
That's
them.
right. So the Gershonites, they were supposed to take care of all these coverings right here, right? They took care of the curtains around the outside, and also, I don't think they took care of all the doors, but they took care of basically all the folding stuff, if you will, all the stuff that you could fold up or roll up and stuff that was sung.
So do you think like God would send down in a cloud, right?
Yeah.
So I guess when he would leave, then they could go in.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And that was the
Yeah.
pillar of fire and the,
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, can you imagine what that would look like when God's presence was there with the cloud over it? I mean, like you can just see the
Glowing.
fire glowing and the
But
flames
could you imagine
pulsating.
going in, you say, you sure he's gone?
Yeah.
still no.
You go in there,
Yeah, you first.
Lord, if it's okay to come.
run up there and see.
I think they would know.
Yeah,
Really did.
I think they would too. All right, Kohath, who wants to pick up with Kohath? Tommy, you want to read or you want to pass? I'll pass. Or you want to read or pass?
I'll read what chapter,
Chapter 3, verse 27.
all right. And of Kohath was the family of the Amorites, and the family of the Israelites, and the family of the Hebonites, and the family of the Uzzites. These are the families of the Kohathites, and if anybody understands that, they are better than I am.
Okay.
In the number of all the males from a month old and upward were 8,600, keeping the charge of the sanctuary. The families of the sons of Kohath shall pitch on the side of the tabernacle south, and the chief of the house of the father of the families of the Kohath shall be, and the son of Uzzah.
Okay.
And their charge shall be the ark, and the table, and the candlestick, and the altars, and the vessels of the sanctuary, wherewith they minister, and the hanging of all the service thereof. And Eleazar,
All right, pause right there, that's good. Okay, so the Kohathites, there's 8,600 of them, okay, and what was their task?
The furniture.
The furniture, that's right.
But Rick, now that brings up a good question. So let's say back when David was moving the ark, remember, and the guys touch it and they
Yeah.
die, then he does it properly. So even if you were a Levite, you weren't supposed to touch the ark unless you was from this clan?
Yep,
Right.
Wow.
that's
I
exactly
never knew
right.
that.
And God said, I'm giving you these assignments because if anybody touches the wrong stuff, what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You die.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so these guys, the Kohathites, they got the furniture, the most important piece of furniture of which was
The
The
ark.
ark.
the Ark of the Covenant. There's 8,600 of these guys here, okay. Now let's move down to the Merarites, verse 33.
On TV, they think it's in Arizona.
Yeah,
That's where it's at now?
Yeah, they think it's,
yeah. All
I
right,
came to the United States.
It's a big movie, so.
who's our next reader?
On the card, they chose.
Who hasn't read yet? Kenny, have you read yet? Did you read? All right, Jackie, let's read, if you wouldn't mind, for
To
33.
Merari belong the clan, wait, am I the right?
All right, verse 33, yeah.
Okay. Clans of Malites and the Mushites. These were their Merarite clans. The number of all the males a month old or more were counted at 6,200. The leader of the families of the Merarite clans were Zuriel, son of Abihail, and they were to camp on the north side of the tabernacle. The Merarites, I don't know how to say that.
Merarites,
What?
Merarites.
Merarites were appointed to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, posts, base, and all equipment, and everything related to their use, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tents, pegs, and ropes.
Okay, pause right there. So the Merarites, they were on the north side, and what did they handle?
Structure of the,
Yeah, say the structure. So they were responsible for hauling all that stuff. These are the guys that carry the heavy load, because not only did they have the pillars, but remember the description of all the bases of each one of these pillars? What were those made out of? Anybody remember? Those are silver. The bases were all silver. And think about it like a cinder block that had 2 holes in it, and the rest of it was made of silver. It was a little bit bigger. Each one of those things weighed, we talked about it before, it's like 100 pounds. But each one of those, that was kind of the base, and then each one of these pillars were stuck into it. And then we have
curtains, were they as thick as they were in the Old Testament?
no, they weren't that thick. They were pretty thick. That wouldn't have been,
But not at the time of crisis.
But these guys definitely handled the laboring ore of this. Okay, then let's read what the other guys did. Let's see. Where did we leave off? Verse 38. Read on, Jackie.
Oh, I'm sorry, what, 38?
Yeah.
Moses and Aaron and his sons were to camp to the east side of the tabernacle toward the sunrise in front of the tent of meetings. They were responsible for the care of the sanctuary on behalf of the Israelites. Anyone else who approached the sanctuary was to be put to death. The total number of the Levites counted at the Lord's command by Moses and Aaron according to their plans, including every male a month old or more, was 22,000.
Okay. Now, if we look over here in verse, let's jump quickly to chapter 4. We have there in the first, start in the beginning, we have the duties of the Kohathites, and it states again exactly what they're supposed to do. And then it has the duty of the Gershonites, and then it also has the duties of the Merarites and all the things that they're supposed to handle. And then starting in verse 36, let's see, actually 34, we have some additional numbers. Wanda, would you read that for us? Read 34 through 36.
Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of the community counted the Kohathites by their clans and families. All the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to serve in the work in the tent of meeting, counted by clans, were 2,750.
Okay, so that's the number I wrote over here, 2,750. So that was the number of actually the working men. They were actually going to do the work. You know, the larger number was everybody from what age? A month old. And these are the guys between 30 and 50. These are the service people, 2,750.
So these 3 clans make up the Levites.
That's right.
Yes.
So is Moses and Aaron classified as a clan, or are they part of one of those 3?
Well, that's a good question. What's the answer to that?
I don't know.
They are not classified with them. They are their own, because Aaron is part of that chief priest. He's the line of the chief priest.
But are these children of Levi?
Yeah, actually, Moses and Aaron are grandsons of Kohath.
Okay.
Because remember, it was Levi and Kohath and Amram, and then Moses and Aaron. But these are the Merarites, the Gershonites, and Kohathites. They're sort of a class unto themselves. They're sort of a sub-classification of the Kohathites. Okay, and it's significant because Moses and Aaron would come into the presence of the Ark of the Covenant and touch it, and the Kohathites were the only ones who were allowed to do that. Okay. Yes. Oh, we're just about out of time. Anyway. Just in closing, what we have, the numbers that I've given in the parentheses here are the numbers, the service people between ages 30 and 50 of the group. And you see, interestingly, that the Merarites, who did all the heavy lifting, they had more than the others, okay, which seems fair. Because they would have been hauling around those big old silver blocks and the heavy structures and whatnot.
So they're probably responsible for the repairs too?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But I don't
Keep their-
All the maintenance and repairs and upgrades if there were any.
I don't understand how,
Ethan Allen, that's what.
if Levi is the fountain of the tribe,
Right.
how did you get subdivisions, subsets of Levites?
Well-
That's his sons.
Yeah.
But the other ones wouldn't have sons?
The sons, oh, yeah. Well, the whole idea was that the Levites were the special group, remember?
Okay.
When they got into the Promised Land, the Levites didn't have an allocated portion of land, right? There were 12 tribes, but Levi didn't have a tribe. Joseph, his 2 sons took over, so that made it 12. There were 12 sons of Israel, including Levi. They had 12 divisions of land in the Promised Land. Levi was not among them, but Joseph's portion was divided up, so he had 12 there. Anyway, that's how that worked. But yeah, the Levites were the priests. They took care of the tabernacle. these are children of Levi. They're different tribes. And why were they divided? Because God said, I'm going to give each one of these a different task. So they had their task. And this subgroup of Kohath, they had also their task. But the important thing about this, the spiritual lesson I want us to glean from this, is that when God started talking about the people, He assigned to every one of them a place. And He assigned to every one of them a task. So this encompassed the entirety of the population of Israel. And what was the task? Well, the task was that you had God's sanctuary, God's tabernacle in the very center of your community. All right? If you were part of the Levites, your job was to take care of the sanctuary, take care of the sacrifices, okay? Take care of the furniture, take care of the curtains, take care of the structure. And then, if you were not a part of that group, you surrounded it. And what was your job here? Your job was to protect those who were taking care of God's sanctuary. So everybody had a task that was God-centered, directly or indirectly. And so if you would ask anybody, where is your place? Well, if you're of the tribe of Judah, this is where you're supposed to be. If you're the tribe of Reuben, this is where you're supposed to be. And what was your job? I'm supposed to be protecting the Kohathites who are doing certain things for this. So everybody had a job that was directly related to serving God, directly or indirectly. Now the question is, are we divided that way now?
Jesus should be the center.
Yeah.
So, who is the Levites? You know, I mean, that's my question. I certainly see, I don't know.
Each one of us is given a spiritual gift.
Absolutely.
So
We're given a
yes,
spiritual
I think
gift
we
and
are.
we're given a spiritual task and we're given an assignment of where we should be. How do we know what our task is and where we're supposed to be?
Holy Spirit.
Yeah, just listen. The Holy Spirit will tell you. God told His people here more directly. Now, it might be nice if God would tell us directly and give us a written instruction where He's supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. But just because He doesn't give it in writing doesn't mean He's not going to speak to us and tell us. So the whole point of this is we should be asking ourselves, what is my place? Am I in the place where God wants me to be? Hope the answer to that is yes. If you're not, you better be asking God, where do you want me to be? And even more important than that is, what is your task? Or as some translations say, what is your charge? God has a charge for everybody. Everybody has a task. Do you know what your task is? If you do, great, do it. If you don't, listen. Those are very important things. And I think it's very interesting here that in these days, this represents our center of worship. We have those who assist us in worship here, okay? So your task, you may be, your place and your task may be that of a Levite, okay? It may be your task to participate in worship, okay? And we all do in one way or another. But if your task is not one of these, at least your task is to protect and care for those who are doing these things, right? And so nobody is left out of that. Everybody has a task. Yes, sir.
If you want to find out one way, of course, is praying.
That's right.
But the other way is try to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Do it wrong.
Try to get
That's right.
it. You'll find out quick.
As soon as you get enough bruises, you can that you go in the
I
wrong
better
direction.
go back where I would. I'm long to play.
That's exactly right. Okay, well good. Now, again, all this stuff is to be on final exam, so